Welcome back. What if I told you that India's top scientists, diplomats, and even a prime minister were eliminated in a secret war that's been raging since 1947? I don't think you will believe this, but this is true. This is a war where both countries smile at each other in diplomatic meetings while their intelligence agencies hunt each other in the shadows. A war that has led to anonymous assassinations, intelligence failures so catastrophic they cost us territory, and betrayal so deep that 150 Indian officers were tortured to death because their own prime minister sold them out.
मैं आपको एक चीज बताता
This is pathetic.
हूँ, एक बहुत छोटी मिर्ची होती है, इसको आप टच भी नहीं कर सकते, जो आपके हाथ को भी जला देती है ना। वैसे आपको मैं देसी बोलूं, बॉक्स मिर्ची टाइप होती है वो बहुत ही डेंजर होती है सर। ठीक है, आपको यहाँ से कट मार दिया जाएगा बॉडी के किसी भी हिस्से से, पार्ट से, ठीक है, और वो पूरी आपको डाल के आपको हाथ से नीडल से सिला जाएगा पूरा का पूरा। आपको कट मारा पूरा अंदर, जैसे आप समोसे के अंदर चीजें भरते हैं, फिर आपको नॉर्मली, और वो सुआ भी आपका ये नहीं होगा जो सुआ वाला है, ये सुआ वो होगा जिसे आप बोरे को नहीं सिलते, वो वाला सुआ होगा पूरा का पूरा। पूरे इसको स्टफ किया जाएगा आपकी बॉडी में जगह जगह पर सर।
But here's the twist. It's also a story of victories so brilliant that they changed the map of the world. Of an agency that started in an abandoned theater with just 250 officers and took on the mighty CIA and won. This is the story most Indians don't know. A story buried in classified files, declassified CIA documents, and the whispered memories of retired spysters. Now let me take you back to where it all began. August 15th, 1947. India celebrates independence. People dance in the streets. Nehru gives his tryst with destiny speech. After 200 years, we are finally free.
We made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
But just 33 days later, 7,000 miles away in Washington, D.C., something sinister is born. September 18, 1947, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Now you might think, what's the big deal? Every country has intelligence agencies, right? But you're wrong. Because within just 10 years, the CIA compiled detailed blueprints of every weakness of 190 plus countries across every continent. These included things like which governments are stable, which are vulnerable, which parties are in opposition, how many rebel groups exist, what are the religious and cultural fault lines. They gathered everything, and they didn't just collect information, they weaponized it. Guatemala, 1954, democratically elected government overthrown. Iran, 1953, Prime Minister removed, Shah installed.
But for the first time now, the CIA has released documents that show its role in the 1953 coup. That is the coup that toppled Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister. Mohammad Mossadegh had moved to nationalize oil production in Iran. Well, the U.S. was concerned at the time that that would mean a victory for the Soviets in the Cold War. So shortly after his election, the CIA began to plan his overthrow, teaming up with Britain's MI6.
Now, the CIA, we've seen it spelling out its involvement in a series of newly declassified documents. These are the actual documents marked confidential, top secret, eyes only. It's the stuff of crime and mystery and spy novels.
Congo, 1961, Patrice Lumumba assassinated.
This week marks the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. He was the first democratically elected leader of what is now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Congo had been a colony of Belgium since the late 1800s, which ruled over it with brutality while plundering its rich natural resources. Patrice Lumumba rose as a leader of the Congo's independence movement, and in 1960 was elected as the first prime minister of the country.
Lumumba's Pan-Africanism and his vision of a united Congo gained him many enemies. Both Belgium and the United States actively sought to have Lumumba overthrown or killed. The CIA ordered his assassination but could not complete the job. Instead, the United States and Belgium covertly funneled cash and aid to rival politicians who seized seized power and arrested President Lumumba. This is how it was reported in a Universal Studios newsreel in December of 1960.
By some accounts, the CIA has been involved in toppling 51 governments worldwide. 51, you heard that right. Wars erupted across continents because of this one agency, which is the CIA. The Middle East, completely devastated. Africa, civil wars raging. Countries become bitter enemies because of CIA manipulation. And when India emerged as a democracy in 1947, do you think they ignored us? Not a chance. Absolutely not. Here's what made Washington lose sleep. Nehru refused to play their game. See, the world was dividing into two camps, Team America or Team Soviet Union. Everyone had to pick a side. But Nehru said, "We have seen what these alliances did to Europe in two world wars. We are not joining anyone." He launched the non-aligned movement, NAM. And here's the part that terrified the CIA. It worked.
Claimed 20 years ago by the founders of the movement at the first conference of non-aligned equitable relations in the world. War has never threatened mankind with graver consequences than today. On the other hand, never national scene.
Can you believe that 121 countries joined India's non-aligned movement? At a time when there was less than 100 independent nations, 121 countries refused to bow to American pressure and joined India's group. Yes, 121 countries refused. You heard that right. Washington was furious. If India succeeded in staying independent and prosperous, others would follow. America's global dominance would crumble. The CIA needed to send a message, a violent message, and they chose the perfect target. Night of April 10, 1995, Air India Flight 300, nicknamed Kashmir Princess, takes off from Mumbai heading to Indonesia for the Bandung Conference, a historic gathering of Asian and African nations charting their own course, independent of superpowers.
The first Bandung Conference held 70 years ago, Egypt has been one of the active members of the group, which in its inauguration included 29 countries that accounted for about 54% of the global population at the time. Since the first Bandung Conference held 70 years ago, Egypt has been one of the...
On board, Chinese and Vietnamese diplomats heading to this crucial conference. The VIP passenger who was supposed to board was the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, one of the founding fathers of the non-aligned movement alongside Nehru. But Zhao changed his plan at the last minute. April 11th, 9:25 GMT,
the Kashmir
a bomb
Princess
explodes in the
aircraft
baggage
exploded
compartment.
in midair.
Fire
The Air
engulfs the
India
cabin.
owned plane crashed
The
into
plane
the South
plummets into
China
the South
Sea
China
after a
Sea.
bomb went off
16
inside.
people dead.
The plane was en route from Hong Kong to Jakarta and Bandung, Indonesia.
The intended target survives. Within hours, global media starts spinning a narrative. Was this an Indian plot to assassinate the Chinese premier? Think about the brilliance of this CIA operation. India and China were brothers at that time. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was the slogan. Many of you may have heard this slogan as well. Do you know that when India reclaimed Goa, China supported India? Similarly, when China occupied Tibet, India said nothing. Now imagine if the world believed India tried to kill China's leader. The non-aligned movement would collapse. India and China would go to war. And this is exactly what Washington wanted. But India needed to clear its name and do it fast too. Prime Minister Nehru deployed a young intelligence bureau officer. His name, Rameshwar Nath Kao, popularly known as K.N. Kao. Kao investigated and uncovered the truth. The bomber was a janitor named Shao Shi-ming, recruited by the Kuomintang, the Chinese Nationalist Party backed by the CIA. The police tried to arrest him. Shao escaped in a CIA-owned aircraft to Taiwan. The pieces fit perfectly. The CIA had tried to frame India for Zhao Enlai's assassination. Kao exposed the plot. India's reputation was saved. But remember this name, K.N. Kao. He'll become crucial in our story. But the CIA wasn't done with India. Not by a long shot. After the Kashmir Princess failure, the CIA realized something. If they wanted control over South Asia, They needed a puppet country in the region, and 0 points for guessing who they chose. Pakistan. Yes, you heard that right. Pakistan was the country they chose. The CIA immediately began pouring financial and military aid into Pakistan. India naturally felt threatened and tilted towards the USSR for balance. The Soviets helped India build major dam projects, universities, hospitals. But the CIA saw an opportunity in the Soviet friendship. If they could make it look like India was becoming communist, they could justify more aggressive actions. And that's exactly what happened next. 1957, the world's first democratically elected communist government comes to power in Kerala, India. This was unacceptable to the CIA. If communism succeeded through democracy in India, it could spread everywhere. So they did what they do best. They destroyed it. The CIA knew everything about Kerala, the languages, the castes, the vulnerabilities. They knew that reforms like the Agrarian Relations Bill and the Education Bill would anger wealthy landlords and Christian religious leaders. They provided funding to opposition parties. They organized what looked like grassroots protests, the liberation struggle, Vimochana Samaram. In just 2 years, so much chaos erupted that Prime Minister Nehru was forced to dismiss the elected government and impose President's rule in July 1959. Here's the terrifying part. India's intelligence bureau had no idea this was happening. Foreign agents were operating on Indian soil, toppling elected governments, and we were completely blind and clueless. The IB, the same agency that once helped the British crush India's freedom movement, was now completely outmatched. But things were about to get much, much worse. October 1962, war with China, and the IB provided intelligence so wrong it paralyzed our military. The Chinese Air Force will bomb Guwahati and Kolkata if we use our Air Force. China has massive bases in Tibet ready to attack. Tibetan locals will fight for China against us. This was the intelligence provided by the IB. None of this was accurate, but based on this intelligence, India made disastrous military decisions. And the result? Humiliating defeat. Large parts of Indian territory lost, and these territories are still under Chinese control today. There was one junior IB officer who watched this disaster unfold. And while still in the IB, he openly declared to his own department, "This is our fault. We don't have the capabilities to fight our enemies." And his name? R.N. Kao, the same man who had investigated the Kashmir Princess bombing. But nobody listened to his warning. 1965, another war with Pakistan. Another intelligence failure by the IB. The war ended in a stalemate, but what happened next was devastating. January 1966, within weeks of each other, two of India's greatest nationalist leaders die mysteriously. Dr. Homi Bhabha, father of India's nuclear program, dies in a plane crash near Mont Blanc on January 24th. Just a year earlier, he had publicly announced India would build nuclear weapons within 12 months. At that time, only 4 countries had this technology. Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri dies suddenly in Tashkent on January 11th, just hours after signing a peace declaration with Pakistan. Years later, CIA station chiefs would hint in interviews that both men were eliminated by the same people. The IB again had no idea. They were clueless. 2 leaders who wanted to make India a superpower were gone. And once again, India's intelligence apparatus was caught completely off guard. After Shastri's death, Indira Gandhi became the Prime Minister of India, and she was furious. India had just analyzed the 1965 war and discovered that it was yet another complete intelligence failure. Indira Gandhi, a die-hard nationalist, couldn't tolerate this incompetency. She summoned one officer, the same man who had investigated the Kashmir Princess bombing, the same man who had warned his department after the 1962 disaster, the man who had been handling PM Nehru's security for years. R.N. Kao. She gave him a simple order: create an intelligence agency that can actually protect India. And September 21st, 1968, the research and analysis wing RAW was born. Here's where the story gets incredible. Indira Gandhi and Kao established the founding principles of RAW. Gandhi's conditions were only the Prime Minister can approve top appointments, and officers of all backgrounds could join, and not only IPS officers. Kao's conditions were RAW will be India's most secretive agency. No officers' names would be on any paper. Only two official posts would be there, Secretary Field and Joint Secretary Analysis, and all other officers would be known by their first names. Indira Gandhi approved everything, but when the Intelligence Bureau (IB) learned a new agency was being created, they fought back. They refused offices, refused furniture, refused trained personnel too. Eventually, after intense negotiations, Kao launched RAW with just 250 officers. The CIA had thousands, RAW had merely 250. And where was the headquarters? An abandoned theatre in Vasant Vihar in Delhi. An abandoned theatre? Yes, that's how RAW started, and Indira Gandhi was the brain behind this. But Kao was brilliant. He sent officers to train with Mossad, KGB, MI6 and even CIA itself. None of them knew he was training with the others. Then came the deployment strategy. RAW officers would go to Indian embassies worldwide disguised as drivers, electricians and clerks. Nobody would suspect them. By 1970, India's first batch of external intelligence officers was ready. A new player had entered the game. While RAW was being built, Indira Gandhi was making moves that infuriated Washington. The first move: the US pressurized India to implement economic policies favorable to America in exchange of aid and voting rights. Indira Gandhi refused. Instead, she launched the Green Revolution and stopped accepting US aid completely. The second move: she nationalized all banks and major industries. The US saw this as India siding with the Soviet Union. Washington was enraged. They felt things spiraling out of control. So they began heavily militarizing Pakistan with modern weapons and funding. RAW Chief Kao understood this, that the CIA was plotting something big against India through Pakistan. And he was right. Pakistan launched Operation Searchlight in March 1971, a brutal genocide against Bengali-speaking people in East Pakistan. But here's what nobody knew. Kao had known this was coming. He had planned for it. Everything was going according to his strategy. RAW had executed a two-phase plan. Phase 1. Kao advised Indira Gandhi to sign a friendship treaty with the USSR in August 1971. But this wasn't an ordinary treaty. It stated that any attack on India would be considered an attack on the Soviet Union. This meant America couldn't intervene when war came. Phase 2. RAW secretly established training camps in the Sundarbans and trained Bengali freedom fighters, the Mukti Bahini. When Operation Searchlight triggered a refugee crisis, India had international legitimacy for intervention. And when war began in December 1971, President Nixon sent the USS Enterprise, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, to threaten India. But Soviet nuclear submarines appeared in the Arabian Sea with a message: "One more step and we attack." The Americans backed down. The Mukti Bahini, alongside Indian Army, liberated East Pakistan in just 13 days. On December 16, 1971, 93,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered, the largest military surrender since World War II. And as a result, Bangladesh was born. RAW was just 3 years old, and they had helped create a new nation, fundamentally altering South Asia's strategic map. The CIA, which had been toppling governments for decades, had been defeated by an agency operating from an abandoned theatre. The CIA was still reeling from Bangladesh when RAW dealt another blow. May 18, 1974, Pokhran, Rajasthan. India detonates its first nuclear device, codename Operation Smiling Buddha. The world was shocked. And here's what's truly incredible. The CIA had no idea it was coming. Think about that. The CIA had satellites watching India 24/7. They intercepted phone calls. They had agents everywhere. Yet they missed India developing and testing a nuclear weapon. How? RAW studied CIA satellite patterns and found blind spots, times when satellites weren't watching. All construction at Pokhran happened during those windows. Scientists used code words, whiskey for certain materials, Taj Mahal for others. Only 4 people knew: Indira Gandhi, 2 advisors, Kao, and the chief scientist Raja Ramanna. Even India's defense minister didn't know. On May 18th, India became the world's 6th nuclear power. The CIA, with all its resources, all its technology, had been outsmarted again. Now let me tell you about one of RAW's most brilliant operations, Sikkim, a tiny Himalayan kingdom between India and China. Look at the map. See that narrow corridor, the chicken neck, connecting India's northeast to the rest of the country? If an enemy controlled Sikkim, they could cut off the entire northeast. And Pakistan knew this. China knew this. The CIA knew this. And the CIA did something extraordinary. In 1961, the widowed king of Sikkim met a 19-year-old American woman named Hope Cook at the Windermere Hotel. They fell in love and they married in 1963. She became the Queen of Sikkim. Now here's where it gets suspicious. After the marriage, the US ambassador made frequent visits to the Queen. And after each visit, anti-India sentiments came from the palace. Sikkim was slowly becoming an American listening post. By 1973, RAW decided that it was enough. They assigned a young officer to the mission. He analyzed the situation and made a bold proposal. Let the CIA keep the Queen. We will overthrow the king. RAW identified local pro-democracy leaders like Qazi Lengdup Dorje. They provided fundamental and organizational support. They spread a simple narrative. In democracy, your voice matters, not under a king. When the referendum was held in 1975, 97.55% voted to abolish the monarchy and join India. Sikkim became India's 22nd state. And that young RAW officer, his name was Ajit Doval. He is now India's national security advisor. He was the man who was instrumental in this work. The CIA, sitting thousands of miles away, didn't even realize what was happening until it was done. But then came 1975. Indira Gandhi declared a national emergency. The opposition accused RAW of being a private army, monitoring political opponents, arresting and torturing anyone who spoke against her. When elections were held in 1977, the Janata Party won by highlighting the emergency's brutalities. Morarji Desai became Prime Minister. And here's the irony. Morarji conducted an investigation that concluded Indira Gandhi had not misused RAW during the emergency. Despite this, he systematically destroyed RAW, closed all regional offices except one cabin in Delhi, fired 600 top officers, sent RAW founder K. N. Rao on forced leave, demoted senior officers like K. Shankar Nair, and by the late 1970s, everyone thought RAW was finished. But the worst was yet to come. Since the 1950s, the CIA had been training Pakistani scientists in nuclear technology. By 1970, Pakistan began developing nuclear weapons at the Khan Research Laboratories in Kahuta with Chinese help. RAW discovered this and launched the Kahuta mission. RAW operatives infiltrated the area. They got jobs in local saloons. When scientists from Khan labs came for haircuts, agents collected hair samples. Lab tests revealed bomb-grade uranium radiation. Confirmation: Pakistan was building nukes. Phase 2. RAW recruited an insider and obtained complete blueprints of the facility. They prepared a comprehensive plan to destroy Pakistan's nuclear program. All they needed was Prime Minister's approval. But by now, it was 1977. Morarji Desai was the Prime Minister. When RAW Chief Santuk approached him for approval, Morarji refused. We are India. We are not aggressors. We don't interfere with other countries' affairs. But then Morarji did something unforgivable. In a phone conversation with Pakistani President Zia-ul Haq He said, "We know about your Kahuta nuclear program. Our RAW has found out everything." Pakistan's ISI immediately hunted down every RAW officer in the Kahuta area. 151 officers identified, captured, tortured, and killed. Why did Morarji do this? There are two theories. One is Gandhian ideology of non-aggression. Two, in 1983, an American journalist exposed that Morarji Desai had received annual payments of $2,000 from the CIA. He also received Pakistan's highest civilian award, the Nishan-e-Pakistan, the only Indian ever to receive it. It was also rumored within the PMO that Morarji and Pakistani dictator Ziaul Haq were close friends who talked frequently. Pakistan went on to develop nuclear weapons successfully. They tested them in 1998, and 150 of India's bravest officers died because their Prime Minister betrayed them. But while RAW was being destroyed, seeds planted years ago by the CIA were beginning to sprout. In 1971, during the Bangladesh crisis, President Nixon had told the CIA, "Teach India a lesson." The CIA and ISI launched an anti-India movement in Punjab. They found Jagjit Singh Chauhan, a Punjabi politician, and flew him to London, demand a separate Sikh state, call it Khalistan. They brought him to New York for press conferences with UN media. India opposes Sikhs, human rights violations, the standard CIA playbook. By 1981, they escalated. They connected with Talvinder Singh Parmar, a Canada-based radical wanted in India for crimes and death threats against Indira Gandhi. When the German Interpol arrested Parmar to extradite him to India, guess who intervened? The CIA. They sent him to Canada instead, where he founded Babbar Khalsa, a terrorist organization. He would later orchestrate the 1985 Air India Kanishka bombing that killed 329 innocent people. The CIA had planted a time bomb in India that would explode with devastating consequences. 1980 elections. Indira Gandhi's Garibi Hatao, Remove Poverty campaign wins. She is back as Prime Minister, and her first act was to revive RAW. By now, Khalistani terrorism was raging. Pakistani trained militants were attacking Indian cities. The ISI was running operations. Indira Gandhi approved a new RAW mission. RAW formed two specialized teams. Team X had the job to eliminate all Pakistani-based terrorists, and Team J had the job to specifically target Khalistani terrorists in Pakistan. The mandate was crystal clear. Every time terrorists hit India, RAW would strike back inside Pakistan. Afghan intelligence agency KHAD, which hated Pakistan, provided RAW with precise locations of terrorist hideouts. And then RAW went to work. Terrorist after terrorist eliminated in Lahore, in Karachi, in Islamabad. Pakistan was helpless. They couldn't stop attacks. Finally, Pakistan approached Jordan to mediate. Please ask India to stop these attacks. RAW had sent a message. Touch India and we'll find you. Anywhere, anytime. This strategy continues today. News keeps emerging of RAW operations in Pakistan, Canada, Nepal. Here's what makes RAW different from every other intelligence agency in the world. The CIA declassifies files after 50 years. Mossad proudly showcases operations and even streamlines some major missions. RAW, completely silence, no website, no public recruitment, no declassified documents, ever. Everything you have heard today came from declassified CIA documents or memories of retired RAW officers who broke protocol, which means this is just the tip of the iceberg. Think about it. If these are the missions that accidentally become public, imagine what we don't know. The CIA itself now praises RAW. American intelligence reports admit India is using sophisticated network to undermine militants in Pakistan. The Mossad chief has openly stated, RAW is so capable, we conduct joint operations with them regularly. Former French intelligence chief Count Alexander de Moranches named Aaron Cow as one of the 5 great intelligence chiefs of the 1970s. How many raw officers are operating in enemy territory right now? How many operations have succeeded that we will never hear about? How many officers have died and we don't even know their names? Raw officers spend 15 to 20 years living under false identities in countries where discovery means torture and death, far from family, far from home, unable to tell even their loved ones what they do. When they die in the field, India often disavows them. No acknowledgement, no memorial, no medals. Their families are told they have died in an accident or simply disappeared. These people live entire lives in disguise. They risk everything every single day, and we will never know who they are. This is the reality of intelligence work, not James Bond, the real version. Where victories are silent, where heroes are nameless, where sacrifice goes unrecognized. From that abandoned theatre in 1968 to whatever classified locations they operate from today, RAW has proven something crucial. It's not about the size of your budget, it's about the number of agents. It's about intelligence in every sense of the word. So, the next time you hear someone question what India's intelligence agencies do, remember this story. Remember the Kashmir Princess. Remember Bangladesh. Remember Smiling Buddha. Remember Sikkim. Remember the 150 officers who died in Kahuta. Remember the nameless warriors fighting battles we will never hear about. Somewhere right now, a raw officer is deep in enemy territory, living a lie, gathering intelligence, protecting India, for a country that will never acknowledge what they have done. That's what real patriotism looks like. No slogans, no speeches, no social media posts. Silent, invisible, deadly. The shadow war continues, and we sleep safely because people we will never know are fighting battles we will never hear about. To the invisible warriors of RAW, past, present, and the future, the story is for you. Jai Hind.